Before I crack on with today's vid, I've just got a couple of announcements to make. So firstly, from now till December, I'm running a competition where every virtual coffee that's bought for me and every monthly Patreon subscription is going to be entry into a raffle where you can win one of the pieces that I've made this year. So I'll be doing a video of the live draw, and then the winner will be able to choose between a selection of mirrors that I've made this year. Second announcement is really pleased to announce that I've been given some money from the Heritage Craft Fund. So Heritage Crafts is a charity in the UK, and their sole aim is to preserve lost and dying crafts. So reverse glass sign painting's on the red list of endangered crafts. So they've kind of given me access to some money so I can make more videos and sort of spread the word. So awesome news. And, you know, it's now, my name is on that very small list of practitioners, up there with names like Dave Smith, Eddie Bennett, brilliant sign company, all people who are way, way better than I am, but it's nice to see your name in such esteemed company. So anyway, cracking on with today's vid. A little while ago, I bought these. They're a drunken eBay purchase, and they're the tools to perform a transorbital lobotomy. If you don't know what that is, you should look it up. It's horrific. But I bought them with the intention of making a really nice display cabinet, and they've been sat in a drawer for quite a few years, so I'm going to do that today. And what I'm aiming for is a kind of tonally etched sort of glass front, very similar to like the sort of snob screens you see in London, but more a sort of poor man's snob screen. You know, I'm not going to be doing things like brilliant cutting or sort of using acid to get the tones. This is going to be through sort of degrees of sandblasting. So anyway, enough of that. Let's crack on with the vid. All right, so I'm here in Photoshop and I've got a very basic design. And as you can see at the moment, it doesn't look anything special. In fact, it looks a little bit clunky and yeah, just not very attractive overall. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this up into the sections so that we can do the tonal etching, but also I'll show you through Photoshop a sort of preview of what it's going to look like. So you can see that at the moment, while it might look a bit naff now, I think it's going to look pretty nice once it's done. So firstly, I want to kind of separate the bits out here that I want to apply my kind of two-tone convex effect to. And that's going to be the text at the top and all of the kind of floral elements around. So I'm not going to have this window and I'm not going to have the name at the bottom here. So I can just hide those. So hide the window, hide the name, and I'm just going to hide the background as well. Now what I'm going to do is jump into the top layer. I'm just going to press Control, Alt, Shift and E. And what that does, you can see that's done a kind of duplicate of everything that's visible. So that's what I'm going to work on, but just to sort of tidy things up as well, I'm going to move this to a different document rather than having all these layers here. So all I'm going to do is go to Duplicate Layer, and instead of just clicking OK, I'm going to go to the destination drop down and then click New, and that's going to create a new document out of that layer. You don't have to do this. To me, it's just, you know, I just want to just show things in a sort of bit more of a tidy manner for demonstration purposes. So what I'm going to be using are my bevel and emboss tools. And I'm going to be doing something similar to my video about convex type. I'll put a link to that video up here where there's a free Photoshop action. I'm not going to be doing an action for this because I think this is going to come down to your own design. You know, you're going to have to play around with some of the settings, but I'll go through those now and it's pretty straightforward. Again, just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to put a blank layer in the background so you don't have to look at that checkerboard transparency preview. I can do that at the bottom of the layers panel here. I'm just going to drag this below, go to my paint bucket tool. If this isn't selected, it'll be, you just click and hold and you'll be able to see paint bucket tool. And I've got my colours set to white. You can do that by pressing D to set it to black and white, and then X swaps those around. And then I'm just going to click in here and fill that background white. So look, just a little bit nicer to look at. So back to my layer. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Layer, Layer Style, Bevel and Emboss. And you're not going to see what's going on there because it's such a sort of minute value that's being applied. So I'm just going to zoom in so we can have a look at this. Right, so I'll show you what this is doing. I'll click the size up. You can see it's creating a sort of a bevel, but it looks nice here, but then when you go here, it looks a little bit weird. And that's just because this is a smooth bevel, and I want this to be chisel hard. See now what that's doing, and we can now start playing around with some of the kind of attributes down at the bottom. So the depth. This is going to change the kind of values a little bit. So I'm just going to slide this up to a point where I think there's the sort of nicest contrast. So right down here, there's not a lot. And even if you go right up to the top, you start to lose a bit. So let's go somewhere, I don't know, something like this looks about right. So the angle is where the light is coming from. At the moment, this is coming from directly above. I don't want this because I'd rather have the light coming across and catching all of these nice sort of vertical bevels. So I'm going to change that angle to 0. That means that light is coming in, you see here, from the right-hand side. Now down to this little section here. What this is, these are just curve profiles. The way curves work, they're very similar to levels, but you've got a bit more control. So here you've got your kind of shadows, midtones and highlights going up the curve, and you can kind of tweak these and pull them about and see those sort of, and see the tonal changes happen. Now these are sort of presets, and you can see what these are doing by applying a curve to what we've got here. And what I want to do again is just find contrast between the dark and the light, because that's what's going to, really help us define the two different bits that we want to do the tonal etching on. So I'm liking that. I think that's pretty good. Tones are nice, but I think we're losing some of that detail up here. And just skipping through, just finding the one you want. And again, this might differ from time to time. I'd personally say that these are going to be your best bet, these kind of curved parts here. So I'm going to go with that. And then what we've got here, which I'm just going to boost these both up to 100. That just means the highlights are at 50%. So I'm going to boost them to 100. And the opacity of the shadows is at 50%. So I'm going to boost that to 100 as well. Now I'm just going to click OK. And that's it. So I'm just going to click OK. So let's zoom out and fit this on screen. And it looks even worse than it did. And that's fine. This is how it's supposed to look at this stage. Now, if there's any of these that you need to adjust, now's the time to do it. And you can double click back on your bevel and emboss thing here underneath your layers, and that will take you back to this. Now, I don't want to do any more. I want to start editing this. So I need to convert this into a layer. And that's easy enough. I right click on it and I go to create layers. This is going to create 2 layers, but that doesn't matter because we're not going to be working separately with them. So I've got my shadow layer, got my highlight layer, but I just want to combine them all together. So let's click on that, Control and E. So now if I just hide my background, you can see that is what we've got at the moment, which is good. It's where I want it to be. But I need to kind of get rid of some of these like sort of slight tones here. And I'm going to do that by simplifying it even further. I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Threshold. That means there's just nothing but solid black and white in this now. So I'm going to click OK. So get in there. Now I'm just going to add a stroke to everything. A stroke basically means it's sort of like an outline. So if I can either double click on my layer, or I can go to Layer, Layer Style, Stroke. So ignore what that's just done. What that's done is put a great big white stroke on the inside, and I don't want that. So what I want to do, let's just start with something like 10 pixels, and I want that black. So if I can just turn the preview on and off, you can see now that's starting to hold that to the page a lot more, and that's what I want. So let's go OK. I think 10's working for me. And same as with the bevel and emboss, I'm going to convert this to a layer. Shift select them both, Control and E, and that combines them. So it still doesn't look good, but I'll show you what it is going to look like when we start doing the etching. And I can do that preview by just going to the levels. I can press Control and L, or you can go to Image, Adjustments, Levels. I'm going to take some black out of this because this isn't going to be black and white. This is going to be tones of grey, and I'm going to take some white out of it. So now hopefully you can start to see how that's coming together. That's what our tonal etching will look like on there. But there's going to be more than that. Let's say, for example, this isn't going to be white. There's going to be sections of this that are etched. So let's take some white out of that. Then there's going to be a little stroke around the outside. So let's just preview that. We're going to put a white stroke on the outside. These are going to be our clear areas. So now you can see that's building up. Now when this comes to cutting the mask, this is all just going to be solid black and white. But I hope that sort of helps you get an idea of what this is going to look like when it's sort of etched onto the glass. You can see much nicer than the kind of black and white preview that we started with. So I'm now just going to add a couple of the elements back to this that I wanted, that I didn't want to add any sort of convex type to. So let's go back onto my original file, go back to my window. Because this is exactly the same size, if I hold shift when I drag this, this will drag this exactly where it needs to be. Same with the text. Just show that again. Shift, drag it in exactly where it needs to be. And that's it really. So I can now convert what I've made into the solid black and white into a mask, take that into Vinyl Master, and that is going to be my etching template. Right, so I've picked out what we'll call the first blast, and I'd advise when you do that to probably have your sort of template up on screen, because it's quite difficult to sort of determine which bits need to come out first. So I'm going to do this in 2 stages, but it's going to sort of have a 3-tone effect, and that's because there's going to be some clear bits as well. So the first bit, I need to just completely blast it so that it's 100% white. Now, glass is binary, meaning, you know, it's either one tone or the other, black or white, or clear or white. But you can sort of cheat that a little bit, because you can, you know, do a light coating which isn't going to etch every bit of the glass. The thing is, once you go to the full etch, you're not going to get any more tone out of it. So first blast doesn't matter. We can just do that over and over again until we're happy that it's white. It's the second one what matters, because then we've got to be really careful and kind of really just faintly go over it, but keeping it even as well. So anyway, we'll do the first blast and then do the second kind of pick, get the rest of the vinyl off, and then do the second blast. Right, so done the second lot of picking, ready for the second lot of blasting. One thing you might notice there is that I cleaned the back of the vinyl. That's not something you have to do, but it's quite difficult to see where the score lines are after the first sandblasting, so it just helps. So I'd recommend doing it. But anyway, I'll just show you what we're going to do in the sandblaster. So it's going to be a little bit different now. Before, you know, we were kind of doing the slow sort of methodical kind of strokes. This time, going to be much further away and kind of be, you know, just gently going over it evenly, then stopping and then checking and seeing how that looks, and just making sure that I'm not kind of, you know, losing any of these little details that we've got in there already. So, and that's it really. So let's just crack on and see what it looks like.